We knew what happened in the script. We knew that something came out of John H.T.'s chest because his line was, "Oh my seconds goo." Hollywood wanted Meryl Streep. The studio said no one would watch a woman fight monsters. Then Sigourney Weaver walked in and changed movie history forever. But after 4 films she walked away from the franchise that made her famous. Now at 75 she's revealing the disturbing truth: the failed clones, the FBI threats, and the dark secret that made her refuse millions to return. Sigourney Weaver was born on October 8, 1949 as Susan Alexandra Weaver. Her family was already famous. Her father, Pat Weaver, was a big name in television. He created The Today Show and The Tonight Show, which changed TV forever. Her mother, Elizabeth English, was an actress who starred in The 39 Steps 1935 but later gave up acting to raise her family. Sigourney also had famous relatives. Her uncle Doodles Weaver was a comedian and her godfather was Steve Allen, the first host of The Tonight Show. Even with all this, Sigourney didn't feel like she belonged. Her parents were busy with their careers and she often felt ignored. She once said she was like a little girl in a big house with no one to talk to. She wasn't the type to rely on her family's success. Instead of chasing acting, she went to Stanford University to study English literature. She didn't live a normal college life. She actually lived in a treehouse with her boyfriend, played the flute and dressed in elf costumes for fun. She did some acting in school plays like A Streetcar Named Desire, but she thought being an actress was silly. That changed when she traveled to Israel after college to work on a farm. She realized how much she missed storytelling, so she decided to apply to Yale School of Drama. Yale wasn't easy. She had classmates like Meryl Streep, who was always getting the best roles, while Sigourney got stuck playing old ladies, which was kind of insulting for someone in their early 20s. The professors didn't believe in her. One even told her, "You have no talent, you should leave." Instead of giving up, she became determined to prove them wrong. But before all that, something big happened. When she was 14 she changed her name. She found the name Sigourney in The Great Gatsby and thought it suited her better. She was already 5'11" by 6th grade and she felt like Susan didn't fit someone so tall. People made fun of her height, calling her the giant spider, but changing her name made her feel stronger. Later that unique name helped her in Hollywood. Some casting directors thought Sigourney was a man's name and were surprised when she showed up. That actually helped her get noticed at Yale. Things started turning around when she met Christopher Durang, a fellow student who also felt like an outsider. They started working together on strange experimental plays. In one play, Titanic 1976, she played a woman who kept live animals inside her body. It was bizarre, but it showed that she could mix weirdness and emotion at the same time. Then they created Dos Lusitania Songspiel, a wild play that mocked war and capitalism. Sigourney played a sex worker smashing champagne bottles while singing about money. Critics thought it was insane, but it got the attention of Warren Beatty, who called it punk theater. When she had to do her final performance at Yale, instead of a serious monologue, she did a piece about a woman seducing a refrigerator. The professors failed her, but Durang secretly gave the script to some agents, and that led to her first Broadway role. Before Alien, she was part of New York's weird theater scene. She and Durang kept working together, pushing the limits of what people expected from plays. In Das Lusitania Songspiel, they added a hedgehog puppet that symbolized capitalism, a version of Romeo and Juliet where the lovers shouted Marxist slogans, and a scene where Sigourney dressed as the Titanic and sank while singing. Most critics hated it, but it became a cult hit. That's when Mike Nichols, a famous director, saw her and later cast her in a Broadway play. Her first film role wasn't anything special. She was in Annie Hall 1977 for 6 seconds. She had no lines and was just standing in a trench coat next to Woody Allen and Diane Keaton. She later joked, "I made $50 and spent it on a sandwich." It was embarrassing, but it ended up helping her. The casting director Juliet Taylor remembered her and later suggested her for Alien, and because no one expected the girl from Annie Hall to fight a monster, it made her performance in Alien even more surprising. Later fans started playing a game called Where Sigourney, trying to spot her in Annie Hall. It was kind of funny. Her first big moment in movies was just standing there in the background, but soon she wouldn't be in the background anymore. She was about to become one of the biggest stars in science fiction history. Sigourney Weaver's role in Alien changed sci-fi forever, but it almost didn't happen. The original script in 1976 didn't specify the characters' genders, but early drafts used male pronouns. No one expected the lead to be a woman. When director Ridley Scott and 20th Century Fox president Alan Ladd Jr. decided to make Ripley female, it was a huge risk. At just 29, Weaver was an unknown actress. She wasn't even The first choice Meryl Streep and Glenn Close were considered, but Weaver got the role. She played Ripley in a way no one had seen before. She wasn't weak, she wasn't waiting to be saved, she was smart, tough, and knew how to survive, but Hollywood didn't respect that. She was only paid $35,000 while co-star John Hurt made $250,000. Fox didn't even want her at first. They thought a female action hero wouldn't work. Scott had to prove them wrong. He made her train with ex-Marines so she looked strong and confident handling machinery. The risk paid off. Audiences were shocked when the male captain played by Tom Skerritt died first. Ripley wasn't just a side character, she was the last one standing. Sigourney Weaver's Oscar nomination for Aliens in 1987 was something no one expected back then. Hollywood didn't take sci-fi seriously. The Academy mostly gave awards to emotional dramas or romance films, not action-packed movies with aliens and explosions, but Weaver's performance as Ellen Ripley was too powerful to ignore. She wasn't like the other nominees that year who played women dealing with heartbreak or personal struggles. Ripley was different. She was strong, smart, and fearless. She led soldiers into battle, fought off terrifying creatures, and protected a little girl. She showed strength and emotion at the same time, something rare in action movies. But in the end, Weaver didn't win the Oscar. It went to Marlee Matlin for Children of a Lesser God, who made history as the first deaf actor to win. Many believed Weaver had been robbed because the Academy still didn't respect science fiction, but her nomination alone changed things. Years later, when Sandra Bullock won an Oscar for Gravity, people saw it as proof that Weaver had helped open the door for women in action films. 2 years later, in 1989, Weaver did something no one had ever done before. She won 2 Golden Globes in one night, one for Gorillas in the Mist, where she played real-life scientist Diane Fly, and one for Working Girl, where she played a ruthless boss. No actor had ever won 2 acting awards in the same night before, and no one has done it since. These 2 roles showed just how talented she was. In Gorillas in the Midst, she completely transformed into Fy, a woman who dedicated her life to protect gorillas. Weaver spent months studying Fy's behavior, even living among real gorillas. The experience was tough. She got sick with denture while filming in Rwanda and refused to use a stunt double for dangerous scenes in Working Girl. She played the complete opposite, a manipulative, arrogant executive who steals credit from her assistant. She made the character so believable that people in Hollywood said she must have been channeling every horrible boss they had ever met. Winning those 2 awards in one night proved she could do anything, but Weaver just laughed about it later, saying, "I think the voters got confused and checked my name twice." Even after all this success, she didn't want to get stuck playing the same kind of role over and over. After Aliens, Hollywood kept offering her tough action roles, but she turned them down. She didn't want to be typecast. She even refused Total Recall and The Silence of the Lambs, both of which became massive hits. Instead, she chose movies that challenged her in different ways. She played a quiet, unhappy housewife in The Ice Storm, which won her a BAFTA. She took on a dark, emotional role in Death and the Maiden, playing a woman confronting her former torturer. The role was so intense that the director called it emotional surgery, and even when she wasn't on screen, she still made an impact. She lent her voice to wall, proving she could captivate audiences without even being seen, but sci-fi always pulled her back. She returned for Alien 3, but only on her terms. She demanded that Ripley's story be meaningful, not just another sequel with mindless action. She wanted her character's death to have purpose. Still, Sigourney Weaver's time on Alien 3 was nothing but a nightmare. The original idea for the movie was completely different from what ended up on screen. At first, the story took place on a wooden monastery planet where a group of monks lived in isolation. They believed Ripley was some kind of divine test, and when the xenomorph appeared, they thought it was their punishment for sin. This version, written by Vincent Ward, was greenlit by Fox in 1990. It was filled with eerie religious imagery, hand-carved wooden corridors, candlelit rituals, a slow-burning horror that mixed faith with fear. But just 3 weeks before filming, the studio scrapped the entire thing. The script was thrown out. The sets were halfway built, but now the movie had no story. Fox panicked because test audiences hated the idea that the little girl from Aliens was killed off screen, so at the last minute they switched everything to a prison planet setting instead. This wasted millions of dollars, and the whole production became a mess. Weaver later said this was the moment when Hollywood stopped taking risks and started making movies just to avoid financial losses. To direct this chaos, Fox hired David Fincher. He was only 28 years old and had never made a feature film before, just music videos, and from the start the studio controlled everything he did. Every morning he had to fight with executives just to shoot the scenes his way. He was working with a script that had been ripped apart and rewritten over and over. Earlier drafts included one from cyberpunk writer William Gibson which focused on Cold War bioweapons and another from Near Dark's Eric Red which was more horror-focused. In the end none of that remained. The movie borrowed pieces from a Prison Break draft written by Walter Hill, but the spiritual eerie elements of Ward's Monastery script were completely gone. Fincher's dark, unsettling style was constantly rejected by the studio he wanted. The opening credits to show ends autopsy making Ripley's grief feel real and painful, but Fox cut it saying it was too depressing on set. Some crew members mocked him and one producer even told him you could piss against a wall for 2 hours and call it Alien 3, it'll still make $30 million. Fincher was so frustrated that after the movie he left Hollywood for a while. When he came back he refused to let studios control his films, which is why movies like Seven happen his way on his terms. Weaver had her own battles. Ripley was completely transformed in Alien 3. She had a shaved head, wore plain prison clothes, and looked worn down from radiation exposure. To create this look, makeup artists used prosthetic glue on her scalp, but it caused severe allergic reactions. She broke out in painful rashes, and they had to switch to medical-grade glue, which still delayed filming. Even shaving her head became a fight. Fincher wanted it real, but Fox wanted a wig, because they thought audiences wouldn't find her attractive enough. Weaver refused. She later said Ripley wasn't there to be desirable, she was there to survive. Fox didn't like this. In retaliation they removed her co-producer credit from early trailers and even promoted the movie with the tagline "The ___ is back." Weaver was furious, calling it insulting and cheap. She had pushed hard to have a say in the movie. After Aliens she was powerful enough to demand script approval. When the studio killed off New and Hicks she insisted that Ripley had to die too, otherwise it would feel pointless, but the endless rewrites drained her. She later admitted the whole thing made her feel exhausted and defeated. This experience also showed her how Hollywood treated women. Male executives called her hysterical for having creative input. Crew members didn't like taking orders from a woman. She even thought about quitting acting because of it, but despite everything she still defended Fincher. She believed the movie was buried under studio interference, but she saw the good in what Fincher was trying to do. Fincher himself wanted nothing to do with the movie. After it came out he called it a nightmare and said no one hates it more than me. When Fox released a longer cut of the film in 2003 restoring 30 minutes of deleted footage, he refused to be involved. The scene he hated most was Ripley's death. Originally she was supposed to sacrifice herself by jumping into molten lead, but at the last second Fox forced a change, making the xenomorph burst from her chest as she fell. Viewer thought it was stupid and unnecessary, just a way to copy Terminator 2's famous ending. Weaver on the other hand still has mixed feelings. She knows the movie is flawed, but she also thinks it was bold. She respects Fincher for not making it safe. Killing Anne was a huge risk, but she felt it made Ripley's grief more real. Over time the film has gained a cult following. Some fans now appreciate its themes of corporate exploitation and bodily autonomy. Weaver believes it deserved better than the hate it got. Sigourney Weaver returned in Alien Resurrection 1997, but this time she wasn't the same Ripley. She played a clone Ripley 8 who wasn't fully human anymore. Scientists had mixed her DNA with the xenomorphs, giving her strange powers. She was stronger, faster, and had acid for blood. She could even sense the aliens, almost like she was one of them. Weaver wanted to show this in the way she moved. She didn't just walk, she stalked, crouched, and stared through people like a predator. In one scene she even growled on the monster's mother. But Ripley 8 wasn't just dangerous, she was also lost. In one of the film's most disturbing moments she found a lab filled with failed clones of herself, twisted, deformed, suffering. One of them begged her to kill it. She realized she wasn't just a copy of Ripley, she was something else entirely. Critics didn't like the film, saying it was too weird, but Weaver defended it. Ripley, she said, had changed. This was a new version of her and she wanted to explore that. One of the most famous moments in the movie wasn't even planned to happen the way it did. There was a scene where Ripley had to throw a basketball over her shoulder without looking and make the shot. The director wanted to fake it with CGI, but Weaver refused. She spent weeks practicing, training with an NBA coach. On the day of filming the crew expected to be there all day trying to get a perfect take, but then on the very first try she made it. Everyone on set was stunned. Ron Perlman, who was in the scene, completely broke character and shouted "Holy ____." They had to cut the scene quickly.